Hi, I'm Glenn from the Wells Vehicle Electronics Technical Services Department.
And I'm Dave.
And we're here today to give you some pointers on ignition coils, testing and diagnosing tips on ignition coils. First of all, we've got a canister style coil here. This is an oil-filled coil. This is the first design ignition coil that went into production. This has been around since the 1900s, used on early point-style ignition systems. And we still get a lot of calls on these today. Dave, can you give us some pointers on that?
We get a lot of calls on these. One thing I just want to mention first is Wells started in 1903, and one of the first things Wells started doing was making replacement coils for the Ford Model T. So obviously we've been here a long time, and coils have evolved a long way in that time, which we're going to get into later. And as far as the calls that I get on these coils, one of the most common calls I get is the replacement, the coil on the vehicle usually says on the primary side here, it'll say distributor and it'll say battery, but the replacement coils just come with a plus and a minus. So then I'll get a call, well, where do I hook those up? Well, all you have to remember is the minus side always goes to distributor, minus distributor. But of course, there's an occasion where that might not work out because there were some older vehicles that actually the battery was hooked up the opposite way, where being the battery positive was actually the ground. And when that's the case, these are hooked up opposite.
Yeah,
you just hook them up the opposite
just reversed.
way.
Yeah,
just reversed.
Those systems were used back in the what
40s and 50s.
40s,
yeah.
early 50s.
But
yeah.
There's a lot of those old cars out there yet, which I really understand with all the calls that I get on those. The other call that I get a lot is the fact that on the outside of this coil, you'll notice on a lot of them it'll say use with external resistor. The reason that is you have to have resistance in the primary side of the coil, the primary side being through these two little points, two little terminals. And the reason that is if you don't have a resistor in there, there's too much current going to the points. That current would cause the points to burn out, so they actually put resistance in the primary circuit. And
Yeah,
they did it two ways, one with a little ballast resistor, which you see on mainly Chryslers and some of the older Fords. But then there was also a lot of them that was just the wiring, the primary wiring itself had the resistance just built into the wiring.
Yeah, some of the American car manufacturers, Ford and GM, built a resistor wire right into the wire harness. They used a stainless steel wire built right into the wire harness to reduce that amperage going to the coil to prolong point life. Served the same purpose. From there we evolved to a dry or epoxy filled type coil with a laminated frame. These coils are pretty robust design. They've been pretty trouble free over the years. However, this type of coil was still used with a distributor, which still involved a distributor cap, rotor, plug wires, and naturally the spark plugs, which all required periodic maintenance. One of the things that was common on this type of system was for the coil towers to corrode under the plug wire, the coil tower or the towers on the top of the distributor cap itself. And so that's things that you need to check. That's just regular maintenance that needs to be checked whenever a tune-up work is done. But from this style coil, we evolved to a distributor-less ignition. And this style of coil does not use a cap and rotor, still requires plug wires and spark plugs. But can you give us a few pointers on what to look for on something like that?
Mainly look over the coil really good, as you said, about the corrosion on here. And all these three coils, they all are able to be checked on the primary and the secondary with resistance check. So you just have to have an ohm meter. And on this particular one, if you're going to check the primary, it's across the two terminals that are on the bottom here where it slips onto the module. And the secondary is just across the two secondary terminals. And all of those specs are on the Wells VE website. So if you go to wellsve.com, look up the coil number, go into the area that's got the information for the coils, you can find the specs.
Yeah, it'll give specs and diagrams as to how to hook up your test meter.
And the same holds true for these other ones. The primary in this one, of course, would be across the two pins here. Secondary would be from one pin over to the secondary. That'd be your secondary reading. And on the older coil would be, this is the primary across these two terminals, secondary from the small terminal, of course, to the secondary terminal.
Well, we've got quite a few more coils to cover, but we're running out of time here today. So make sure and tune in next time for CounterPoint Live. We've got quite a lot of coil technology to cover for you yet. So join us next time for CounterPoint Live.
Yeah, and remember, if there's any questions that you have, you can always call our tech line. And I think you said there was someone that said,
Yeah, actually, guys, before you go, Drew came on and said, "Hey guys, thanks for having me." So
Yeah, shout out to Drew. Thanks for
Drew.
tuning in. And our website is wellsve.com, and our tech line number is 800-558-9770. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to give us a call.
7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Central Time, Monday through Friday.
And I'm Glenn.
And I'm Dave.
We're here at Wells Vehicle Electronics. This is
To help you.
CounterPoint Live. We'll see you next time.